Okay, let's unpack this. Just think about your day so far. Did you maybe grab a coffee on the way?
Mm,
Stream some music? Maybe book a gym class? Or even just daydream about your next holiday?
yeah, happens all the time.
Every single one of those moments, that interaction, that's a service.
Exactly. And, services aren't just quick transactions. They're really the experiences, the convenience, sometimes the expertise you rely on, like all day long.
Right. They seem kind of invisible sometimes, but they're definitely the engine driving things, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. The modern global economy runs on them. And look, if you're aiming for a career in dynamic fields like tourism or leisure, getting your head around this engine, understanding services marketing,
Hmm.
well, it's just crucial, non-negotiable, really.
So this deep dive, it's built specifically from a whole stack of sources you shared with us, listener. We're getting into the real basics, the fundamentals of services marketing.
That's the plan.
And our mission, it's basically twofold. First, to really grasp just how massive the economic impact of the service sector is. And second, to kind of dissect the unique DNA, what makes a service fundamentally different from a physical thing you can hold. We're using your material as our guide here.
And just for context, quite a bit of this material actually comes from a marketing module. It's insights shared with students, perhaps like you, focusing specifically on marketing in tourism and leisure. It's provided by Professor Auerbach over at Stralsund University in Germany. So it's a really solid foundation we're working from.
Okay, excellent. So let's set the scene then, because the global economy, it's really gone through a huge transformation, hasn't it? We've shifted from
Yeah.
mostly making things.
To mostly doing things for people. Yeah. It's a fundamental reorientation. You
Yeah.
think about the typical stages economies go through, right?
Agriculture, then industry.
Exactly. Agriculture, then industry and manufacturing. And now, certainly for most advanced economies, services are just dominant. It's not a minor tweak. It's redefined what these economies actually are.
And the numbers you pulled out, they're pretty staggering on this. Your sources were highlighting that services often account for, over 60%, sometimes pushing 80% of GDP?
It's huge. Look at the data you had for Germany in 2023. Services, 69.6% of GDP. Just compare that. Manufacturing is 24.3%, construction 5.4%, and agriculture way down to 0.7%.
Wow.
Or look at the U.S. services are getting close to 80% there. The picture is just crystal clear. Services are the economic powerhouse now.
Okay, dominant. Got it. But why? Why this massive shift? What were the drivers behind moving away from industry towards services?
Well, it seems to be a convergence of several big forces, as outlined in your sources.
Yeah.
Technology, for one, is a massive piece of it.
Right.
Think about digital platforms, automation, cloud computing. They basically made delivering a whole range of services faster, cheaper, and crucially, at a much bigger scale than was ever possible before.
Yeah, that makes sense. Services used to be tied to a place, but now you can get IT support or consulting from anywhere. Globalization must feed into that too.
Absolutely. It allows countries to export services, things like finance, software development, legal advice, you name it. And then there's us, the consumers. Our behavior has changed. As incomes generally rise, people tend to shift their spending. Maybe less focus on just acquiring more physical stuff.
And more on experiences, education, health, entertainment, travel.
Exactly. Experiences, personal development, leisure, tourism, that's where the spending goes.
That feels right. Investing in memories, not just possessions. And you mentioned urbanization too.
Yeah, that plays a role. When people concentrate in cities, it naturally ramps up the demand for a whole mix of services, transport, food, culture, utilities, everything.
So it's like a perfect storm of tech, global connections, changing wealth, and where people live.
Pretty much a multifaceted shift.
Okay, but it's more than just being the biggest slice of the GDP pie, right?
Yeah.
This sector has really deep effects across the whole economy. Let's talk about that economic impact.
Oh, it's absolutely vital. I mean, first off, maybe the most obvious, is jobs, employment generation. Services tend to be very labor intensive. Your sources pointed out that in many developed countries, over 70% of all jobs are now in the service sector. And that's a huge range. you know, from high-skill tech and finance roles down to essential jobs in hospitality, retail, care. It's a massive engine for employment.
Which naturally ties straight back to its contribution to GDP. If it employs the most people, it's likely driving national growth.
Right. But it's not just about size. Services are increasingly where innovation happens. We often picture breakthroughs coming from labs or factories, but think about fintech disrupting banking, ed tech changing learning, health tech revolutionizing care.
That's a great point, like telemedicine or AI customer service.
Exactly. Innovation is happening within the service delivery itself, often powered by digital tools.
And like goods, services can be exported, bringing money into the country.
For sure. Think about countries famous for tourism revenue, or places like India, which have become global hubs for IT services and business process outsourcing, BPO.
So what's the key takeaway here for you listening, especially if you're targeting tourism or leisure?
Well, the really critical thing to grasp is that this economic picture isn't just some abstract background info. Understanding the sheer scale, the drivers, the impact of the service sector, it's foundational knowledge. You're aiming for a field that isn't just part of the economy. It's a core, vital, growing engine of the economy.
Right.
Knowing this gives you context, it highlights the opportunities, and honestly, it underlines the importance of what you're studying.
That really puts it in perspective. It's not just about learning tourism marketing, it's understanding the whole economic world you'll be working in. Okay, scene set. Now, let's get to that fundamental question. What actually is a service? How is it different? Because like you said, you can't put a hotel stay in a box.
Exactly, and that's the core of it. Services are fundamentally different because they are experiences, performances, or processes. You don't take physical ownership. And to really get a handle on these differences, there's a classic framework we use, the IAP model.
Ah, the IIP model, the kind of unique code, the DNA of services, right?
Yeah.
Let's break it down, starting with I for intangibility.
Intangibility, yeah, this is usually the most obvious one. You simply cannot see, touch, taste, smell, or, importantly, store a service like you can a physical product. They exist as actions, as performances, as experiences.
Okay, and the implications of that are huge, aren't they? If you can't physically check it out before you buy, how do you judge the quality? How do you even know what you're really getting?
That's the central challenge. For the customer, there's often a higher perceived risk because they can't evaluate it beforehand in the same way. This means things like trust, reputation, brand image. They become incredibly important, absolutely paramount.
So the service provider has to work harder.
They have to. They need to use tangible cues, things the customer can see or interact with, to build confidence and signal quality before the service happens. Think about the physical environment, like a hotel lobby, the appearance of the staff, the quality of a website, brochures, customer reviews.
Like booking that hotel room online you mentioned, you're not actually in the room yet. You're totally relying on photos, what other people said in reviews, the overall feel of the website, the brand's reputation.
Precisely. So marketing strategies have to actively compensate for that lack of a physical thing to inspect. This means using testimonials, case studies, maybe offering guarantees if possible. It means focusing promotion on the benefits and the outcomes the customer will get, not just listing features. And of course, investing heavily in building a strong, trustworthy brand.
Okay, this whole challenge, making the intangible feel tangible, making it feel trustworthy, it seems massive, especially in fields like tourism and leisure where you're basically selling a future experience.
It is.
So here's something we were thinking about, and maybe you listening could ponder this too. How can organizations, specifically in your field tourism, leisure, get really creative about tackling this intangibility challenge? What innovative ways have you seen, or what ideas do you have to make that promise of an intangible service feel solid, real, and reliable to someone before they click book?
That's a great question to mull over. Seriously, think about it. Okay, moving on from intangibility. The next letter in IHIP is H for heterogeneity, or sometimes called variability.
Right. This gets at the idea that services aren't identical units rolling off an assembly line. They can vary a lot, depending on who provides them, when, where, even how they're delivered. Human interaction plays a huge role here.
Which directly means that quality can be inconsistent. The exact same service offered by the same company can feel quite different depending on which employee serves you, how busy the place is, maybe even your own mood or the presence of other customers. This variability is a real headache for maintaining consistent customer satisfaction.
The classic example is the restaurant, right? Go one night, it's amazing. Go another night, same place, maybe a different server, kitchen slammed. It's just okay.
Exactly that. So the strategies here are all about trying to reduce that unwanted variability. Things like really rigorous employee training, focused on delivering service consistently.
Standardization.
To a degree, yes.
Oh.
Leveraging technology to standardize certain parts of the service process can also help. And critically, having really good systems for collecting customer feedback and then actually acting on it to spot and fix inconsistencies.
Okay, makes sense. So I for intangibility, H for heterogeneity. Third is another I, inseparability.
Inseparability. This highlights that services are typically produced and consumed at the exact same time. Unlike a product that's made, then shipped, then stored, then sold. A service often requires both the provider and the customer to be present interacting for the service to actually happen.
So the customer isn't just a passive recipient. They're often actively involved in the production process itself.
Often, yes. That interaction between the provider and the customer becomes absolutely crucial. The quality of the service isn't just down to the provider's skill. It can also depend heavily on the customer's participation and engagement.
A classroom lecture is a good example, maybe. The learning experience isn't just the teacher talking. It depends on students asking questions, participating.
Perfect example. The quality emerges from that interaction.
So for marketing, this means what? Focus on people skills.
Big time. Training staff in customer service, interpersonal skills, conflict resolution. That's vital. It also means carefully designing the servicescape, the physical environment, where the service happens to facilitate a positive customer experience. And sometimes it involves actively encouraging and managing customer participation to ensure things go smoothly.
Got it. Intangibility, heterogeneity, inseparability. That leaves P, perishability.
Perishability. This one's straightforward but has big consequences. Services cannot be stored, saved, or put into inventory like physical goods.
If you don't sell it when it's available, that chance is gone forever.
Exactly. That specific opportunity to generate revenue is lost. The implications are pretty stark. It means managing demand and supply becomes absolutely critical. Idle capacity, think an empty hotel room for the night, an unbooked appointment slot, an unsold seat on a plane after takeoff.
That's just lost revenue. Gone. You can't get it back.
Irrecoverably lost.
Okay.
And on the flip side, if demand fluctuates wildly and you don't have flexible capacity, you get inefficiency when it's quiet and potentially unhappy customers facing queues or delays when it's busy.
That airline seat example is just brutal, isn't it? Once that plane door closes, the potential value of that empty seat is zero. Forever.
It really highlights the point. So managing perishability involves a whole toolkit of strategies. Smart pricing is key, using discounts to stimulate demand during off-peak times, maybe charging premium prices during peak season to manage demand.
Yield management, basically. Exactly. Implementing robust reservation systems, which are obviously fundamental in tourism and leisure. And things like having flexible staffing models that can scale up or down somewhat with demand. It's all about minimizing those lost opportunities and trying to match capacity to demand as best as possible.
Okay, wow. So when you lay them out like that, intangibility, heterogeneity, inseparability, and perishability, you can really see how they're not just, academic terms. They fundamentally change the whole game for marketing compared to selling physical goods.
They absolutely do. They permeate every single decision you make about your marketing strategy, not just the traditional 4Ps, product, price, place, promotion, but especially the extended Ps that are so crucial for services: people, process, and physical evidence. You have to design all those elements with IHU constantly in mind.
Right. So let's try and wrap this up. We've covered quite a bit. We talked about the incredible economic weight of the service sector globally, its massive share of GDP and jobs, its role now in innovation and exports.
Yeah, setting that context was important. And then we really dug into the core, the unique characteristics that define services, using that IHP model. Intangibility, can't touch it. Heterogeneity, it varies. Inseparability, produced and consumed together. And perishability, use it or lose it.
And maybe just one final thought to leave you with, building on where services might be headed. As digital transformation keeps accelerating, as sustainability becomes, non-negotiable, and as customers expect more and more personalization, how might these huge forces further challenge, or perhaps even change, how we need to think about and address those core IHP characteristics, especially in tourism and leisure? The ground is always shifting.
That's a really good point to ponder, constant evolution. Well, if you found this deep dive useful and you want to keep exploring marketing, both the theory and how it works in practice, uncovering more topics like this one, definitely make sure you follow this channel.
Yeah, there's always more to learn.
Absolutely. There's always another layer to unpack.